All right, today I am joined by an absolute legend in the hip hop game. I'm, of course, talking about the legendary Havoc. How you doing today, sir?
What's going on, man? Good morning.
Good morning. So, 2021, we're living in some crazy times. We got a pandemic going on. How have you been? What are you up to?
Me, just working on music like I've been usually, even before the pandemic. You know what I mean? Just working on music and mastering my craft.
What type of music are you working on?
Right now, I'm just working on a lot of hip hop. You know, what I'm saying tracks for different artists. You know what I mean? Stuff of that nature.
I talked to Jamal and Malik from Illegal not that long ago. They said you had some tracks for them that you were producing.
Yeah. Jamal from Illegal, he hit me up a few weeks ago, and he told me about a project that he was working on. Like he was putting, I think Illegal was working on some new music, and he wanted me to submit some tracks and help them work with the project. And Illegal was one of my favorite groups back in the days. So I was with it. You know what I mean?
Awesome. Yeah, something for fans to look forward to. I know a lot of Illegal fans have been asking and looking forward to that, so that's good.
Word.
So let's kind of go to the beginning. Who or what inspired you to get into music?
What inspired me to get into music? Well, growing up in the hood, you know what I mean, hip hop, played a major part in growing up. You know what I mean? Back in the early '80s for me, you know, um, and where I come from, a lot of legends come out of that area. Talking about Queensbridge, and I had a lot of role models to look up to. People like Marley Marl, Roxanne Shante, Craig G, Tragedy, Gaddafi. Uh, countless others are MCs. So that was like a real big influence on me. You know what I mean? In music, to get into music, and not to mention that my father was like, he was a DJ. Growing up, so he used to play a lot of loud music in the house growing up.
Very good. Can you think of a song or some group or artist where you're like, oh, dang, this is what I want to do?
Early on when I first started writing as an MC, I would have to point to the Jungle Brothers. You know what I mean? I really was digging their sound at the time. I was about like 13 years old, and I really, me and one of my close friends back then was really into the Jungle Brothers, and that really kind of made me want to start writing and getting into hip hop.
So take me to when you first met Prodigy. What went through your head?
When I first met Prodigy, I was like, he was a fly little dude. You know what I mean? He had the high top fade. Uh, it was dyed like kind of like blonde. They used to call him the Golden Child, and he had all his jewelry on. And so just immediately off top, when you met him, is somebody that you wanted to, kind of figure out and see who he was. And that's what we ended up doing because we had mutual friends in common. So when I first met him, my first thoughts was like, this is an interesting dude, like interesting character, and he ended up being very interesting.
Sure. So ultimately, what you guys decide to be a duo and ultimately become one of the best rap duos of all time, of course, being Mobb Deep.
No doubt. What made us want to decide to become a duo is because we had the same passion. You know what I mean? He was a rapper, I was a rapper. We both were solo artists, and we wanted to break into the music business. So we had the same goals. And being that we hung around each other as often as we did, we figured like, you know what, fuck it, let's make a group. And that's what we did. I mean, it was a long shot, but it's one that we took.
Sure. I heard you say before that he was more of a risk taker and you might be a little more safe. Can you give me an example of that?
An example of that was like I used to always want to try to do things by like the book as far as the norms. Like so, we would be I would always analyze hip hop songs and say, okay, this is how many bars they doing, this is how long the chorus is, and so on and so on. And I would use that as a template. And a lot of times when Prodigy used to write, he used to write outside of that template. You understand what I'm saying? And at first, it kind of aggravated me because I was like, yo, we got to do it like this. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we want to make it. But he proved that you don't have to follow the norms in order to be successful. You could go outside of the rules. And that's what he used to do. So, and he proved that to be successful. You know what I mean? A lot of of our songs, he's rhyming way beyond 16 bars. Some songs don't even have choruses, like, your conventional, hook. You know what I mean? So that's what I meant by when I, expressed that.
So basically, you got to the point where you just let him do his own thing. Like, okay, Prodigy knows what he's doing.
It was better to let P do his thing.
So you're also known for being a dope producer. When did you decide to add that to your resume?
Kind of early on, even before the infamous album when we did Juvenile Hell. Prodigy's grandmother brought some equipment. She saw something in us, and she was very observative, brought us equipment. And when I went to Prodigy's house, I always wanted to produce. So he showed me how to work a little bit of the equipment, and after that, it was just off to the races. I found, my niche. You know what I mean? Like that was what was missing. You know what I mean? Because we both was creators, and that's what made me wanted to produce at that time.
Nice. For someone that might not know, what exactly is your job as a producer?
Your job as a producer is to come up with the tracks, make the beat. You know what I mean? Most of the time, producers are hands-on, and they're actually the ones making the music. But that doesn't have to necessarily be so all the time. Like, a producer is a person that could put all of the musicians together, have the vision for the track, and direct the musicians to create the track that he's envisioning. That's another aspect of production of a producer. Or a producer could just actually be the ones playing the instruments and the drum machines all on his own by himself.
Have you ever put a beat or something together where maybe a couple of artists were fighting over it?
Nah, I never did a track where a couple of artists was fighting over it, but I may have made a mistake and gave the same track to another artist that I already gave prior. You know what I mean? I had to pull back, a track from one of the artists, which I always hate to do because that, it's just horrible. You know what I mean?
Are you allowed to tell me the artist and how was that resolved?
I can't really remember the artist. It was just so long ago, but I remember the situation. You know what I mean?
So getting into some of your classics, tell me about the infamous album. So you talked about Juvenile Hell. What was the goal going into your second album?
The goal going into the second album was making it better than the first. You know what I mean? More successful than the first one. The first one, we was just getting our feet wet in the game. We was brand new to the industry. Didn't really know what was going on, but it was a learning lesson, so it had to happen. Moving forward, we got a second chance to get a record deal with Loud Records, and our goal was to not have this record flop, at least. You know what I mean? And the goal was to just be us and create what we want to create.
Sure. I remember in your record credits, when you would read them in the album cover and everything, you said F of certain record label on the Infamous. Was that your previous label because do you have issues with them, or do they not promote the album well?
Yeah, that was me being young at the time and just like kind of blaming the record company for the non-success that the first album had. Now looking back on it now, everything happens for a reason. You know what I mean? I can't fault the label. We signed to them, you know what I mean? So it's not like we knew what we was walking into. So you can't really blame anybody for, something that's not successful. But when you angry and you young and you mad, you try to place the blame on anywhere you can besides yourself.
So when we talk about classics, I mean, Shook Ones, it's crazy how relevant that song still is today. I mean, how does it feel to have a song be that old and still getting so many views?
I mean, if I just feel lucky. I feel blessed. You know what I mean? To have a song that still is relevant so many years later is rare. You know what I mean? And it's a great feeling, man. I can't describe it, but I'm glad that it happened.
Is that your favorite song on that album, or would you pick something else?
Nah, that's my favorite song on the album, period.
Excellent.
A lot of people try to go outside the box, and the main song that made them, they try to pick some obscure song on the album and be like, this is my favorite. But the one that propelled us to where we are has to always be my favorite of all time.
Excellent. So that's obviously an incredible song. Another one of my favorites on there is Up North Trip. What can you tell me about that song?
Yeah, so Up North Trip was one of those songs where we was shedding light on brothers getting locked up and getting sent up north to jail, to prison, you know what I mean, getting prison time and all of the things that come along with doing prison time, you know what I mean? Not a place where you want to be, but most of our friends kind of end up sometimes. So we just shed light on the topic.
Now, I know what the definition is for the infamous, bad reputation, but is there more that goes into that when you guys are calling yourself the infamous?
Um, when we a little bit more goes into it than other than it being like somebody being bad. To us, it's like, we just infamous for everything that we do. You know what I mean? It's like we made it out the hood, like, you know what I mean. We created, successful music, and we looking towards the future. You know what I mean? So infamous means a lot more to us than just the standard definition that they have in the dictionary.
I kind of grew up in a rural area, and Mobb Deep was such an influential group, still is. So I didn't have a whole lot of access to rap music. I'd have to go out of my way, maybe get Vibe magazine. We didn't have BET. We didn't have the box. But I remember when I'd sign yearbooks in high school, I'd put myself, instead of my first and last name, I'd put the infamous Nick Aiken. And people would be like, what are you talking about? I mean, how does it feel to be that influential, though, for somebody that's in like a country area?
It feels good because it could have went the other way, right? Like, nobody could have gave a shit about us. You know what I'm saying? Part of my French. But it feels good. You know what I mean? That we put the right ingredients together for a recipe that was a recipe for success. That people wanted to emulate it, wanted to be like it, and paid homage to it.
So I want to take a left turn. I don't think I've ever heard you ask this in an interview. I want to talk about another one of my favorite songs you were part of. 1995, you guys are on a song called Bloodshed and War with the Youngstas. Tell me about that classic.
It was called Bloodshed and War, you said?
Bloodshed and War with the Youngstas.
Yeah. The Youngsters was a group that we was kind of cool with back in the 90s, you know what I mean? Got really cool with them. They're out of Philly, we from New York, so it's kind of like the same demographics. We got along really well. And it was a pleasure doing music with them because we all was young, you know what I mean? And striving for the same goal, and had a really great time in the studio doing the music.
You're this dope producer. Karan Gubner from the Youngsters is a producer.
Yeah.
Do you guys butt heads, or do you have an idea, he has an idea, and you come up with a masterpiece?
I never butted heads with Karan that I could remember. You know what I mean? I'm always one of those type of people where if I'm around other producers, I really, really, truly respect what they do. And I try to learn from every producer that I meet, regardless of what level I think I'm on. Because there might be things that, they do that you don't do that you could kind of pick up on.
Sure. So that song seemed like such a natural fit. I know you guys have another song on YouTube called So Sick, but why did you guys not work together more after that?
It's so far back that I can't even really remember. But I would just say that a lot of times, in situations like that, when you do music with certain people, everyone still has their own path that they still have to take. You know what I mean? And for whatever reason, the respect is always there. But if we never worked together again, it's because, maybe schedule, timing, and, just other things happening in life that didn't make that necessarily happen. But good thing we made this one song happen at least.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. There's another member in the group named Tariq. The reason why I'm bringing him up, he kind of lays low. I don't think he has a social media. I don't think he takes early interviews. And I've heard you say before, you sometimes like to lay low. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I guess my question is, being that you were big in the 90s, 2000s, whatever the time frame is, do you have an obligation to kind of represent your brand or take interviews? Or is it more so just respect somebody's privacy?
I think that, if you respect your brand, I think you do have an obligation, to every now and then do interviews to, not to promote your brand, but, just to keep a little light on your brand. I mean, it's your brand. You don't want it to fall too much into obscurity. You know what I mean? So, every now and then, I do interviews because I enjoy doing interviews and, answering the questions that the fans would like to hear or the supporters would like to hear.
So when you go into Hell on Earth, what's the goal there? Did you guys realize how big the Infamous was when you guys were working on Hell on Earth?
Yeah, we knew that, to try to do at least half as good as the Infamous album, that it would be, it was going to be an uphill battle. So we did know that we was coming off of a successful album. You know what I mean? It went gold. That was like beyond our wildest dreams. So when we was doing Hell on Earth, it was sort of like, like, oh shit, like what we gonna do now? You know what I mean? It's, you can't top the Infamous album. You could just only do another good body of work.
Sure. Probably my favorite song on that album is "Drop a Gem on 'Em."
I like the song, you know what I mean? I really liked it. We was gonna drop it as a single, and it was catching a little bit of traction. And as you know, the song was an answer back to Tupac, and he
Yeah.
died maybe like 2 weeks later after we dropped the single, and we had to pull it.
Did you guys ever actually truly take exception to anything Tupac said, or was it more like, "Oh, great, look at Tupac, he's shouting me out" type of thing?
I mean, I can't talk for P, but I know that's how I felt. I was like, oh shit, he's shouting us out. Fuck it, let's do it. You know what I mean? Because I never met him before in my life. I seen him from a distance, never met him, and didn't have no idea why he was shouting us out. But I wasn't mad at it.
Yeah, so there's really no rhyme or reason why he said anything about Mobb Deep. I remember, like, where did this come from?
There's a reason why he said it. I have a theory on it. I think it has something to do with the record "Survival of the Fittest." In the chorus, in the chorus movies like "Thug Life is Still Living It." You know what I mean? And he was doing the whole Thug Life thing, so he probably thought that we was, biting off of him or something like that. But.
Another song I really enjoyed that I feel like doesn't get quite the love it deserves is "Back at You." It was on Sunset Park. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that was for a soundtrack, a movie soundtrack. I don't think it went on any of our albums. That was for the soundtrack of Sunset Park. We shot a video for it. I believe Diane Martell shot the video. We shot it in Manhattan, uptown, in Harlem. Had fun doing it. I loved making the beat for it. It's just one of those songs, man. Just to add to the list.
Add it to your catalog.
Right, add it to the catalog.
So how do you get recruited, or how do you get approached to have a song on a soundtrack like that?
Management has ties to movie production houses, and they're privy to what soundtracks are being made, and that's the mark of a good manager that could get you good work. You know what I mean? Because soundtracks, at least back then, they paid really well.
You guys did a lot of work with Big Noyd. Tell me about Big Noyd.
Big Noyd is somebody that I grew up with. You know what I'm saying? From our projects, him and my mother and his mother were really close friends, good friends. Me and Noyd hung out, you know what I mean, a little bit, and then he lived in the next building from me. So naturally, when me and Prodigy got on and realized that Noyd, was a lyricist, we brought him along, you know what I mean, and he stepped up to the plate.
How'd you like working with Vita on Burn?
I liked working with Vita. Because she was like one of my favorite artists back then, So we did Burn, and we was like, hey, we need a female on the hook, you know what I mean? Because, Mobb Deep is so hardcore, we don't really have that many female fans, you know what I mean? So every now and then we would have to throw a female on the hook. We tapped Vita to do it. She did it. We were satisfied, and it ended up being another classic song.
Absolutely, yeah. Another classic album, Murda Muzik. So I thought that was pretty close to the Infamous. Would you agree with that, or would you still say Infamous is well ahead of it?
Murda Muzik, I would say definitely it came close. It definitely came close. And it was our actually first platinum record. You know what I mean? So we had a little bit more of from a record selling standpoint, more success with that album than the Infamous. And we definitely came close because, we did The Quiet Storm, which was crazy off the hook. It's Mines featuring Nas. I mean, that album was filled with a few bangers.
Absolutely love It's Mine. How was it working with Nas, which I know you've done many times?
Yeah. Working with Nas is always an event. You know what I mean? I appreciate him as an artist. You know what I mean? As a friend, and it's never a dull moment, whenever you get a chance to be in the studio with Nas.
What's a better version of Quiet Storm, the original or the one with Lil Kim?
They're both equally dope. I wouldn't pit one against the other. I let the fans do that. But to me, they both dope. The first one that Prodigy did was fucking incredible. And then the one with Lil Kim just, kind of took it over the top.
Another one of your classics was Hey Love. Of course, that's with 112. Did you get any pushback from your hardcore fans being like, yo, Mobb Deep doesn't do a song with 112?
Yeah, initially, our hardcore fans, they didn't appreciate it, but there's always going to be that percentage of fans that don't like certain music that you do. But sometimes you have to expand your talents. You know what I mean? And you can't just be a one trick pony. You know what I mean? You have to show that you could cater to a different demographic of your fan base, which is women. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't ignore the women. And it's not like we was trying to make a radio record. You know, relationships with women is an aspect in a man's life. You know what I mean? So we made the record. It was dope. 112 is one of my favorite groups. Was happy that they agreed to come on board and do the project. And I was really satisfied with the song. To this day, I love the song. And it is another classic. Maybe not for the hardcore fans, but a lot of women out there, if you asked them that was a Mobb Deep fan, that was one of their favorite records.
Absolutely. Great answer. Tell me about when you went to G Unit. How was that?
When we went to G Unit, man, that was just such a amazing moment, a snapshot in time. You know what I mean? To be here, we are in the game already 10 years in, already being looked at as vets and probably kind of being written off a little bit. And then catching a lot of flack for signing with another label that could allot us to new fans, a new fan base. But to answer your question, going over to G Unit was like it was an interesting and amazing moment. We got to tour in some places that we never toured before. We got to perform in front of audiences the size of 100 times the size that we was used to. So it was just a really a surreal, amazing moment.
Like, because of G Unit, you got to have that travel where you didn't travel before or have a bigger venue just strictly because of G Unit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we was performing in stadiums now. You know what I mean?
Okay.
We never performed in stadiums. I mean, we did festivals. You know what I mean? Festivals and stuff like that. So yeah, we performed in front of crowds that big. But this was like kind of different because we was doing this shit every night. Like, you know what I mean? Every night is like a different stadium. So it was dope.
What's a country or place you got to travel to working with G Unit that you never did before that you really appreciated?
I would have to say um Monte Carlo. What's in some place that it was just it was off the never been there in my life. It's like one of the richest countries in the world. Monte something. I don't know, but it was one of the richest places in the world. Like it was crazy.
Of course, worked with Nate Dogg on that album. Tell me about the greatness of Nate Dogg.
Yeah, Nate Dogg was like one of those dudes like you definitely always wanted to get a feature from, and then we was finally able to get a feature from him. Because we got a feature from him even before we got to G Unit. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I think we had him on the Infamy album. You know what I mean? Worked with him. Was in the studio with him. Real quiet dude. About his business. Does his work. Don't really talk too much. And that was that. But I loved the fact that we got a chance to work with him.
When we get into the Mobb Deep catalog, outside of Shook Ones, do you have another song that you would say your favorite would be? It could be any album or any feature.
I would have to say Burn. Burn
Great
the
song
learn.
with Vita.
Um, it's Mines. You know what I mean? It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Can you tell me a story about Prodigy that maybe fans would not be aware of? Maybe how he was to travel with or tour or something?
Mm, a story about Prodigy that I can say. Well, I remember a story. I remember one time we went somewhere. We was performing in this particular country, and somehow some fan had got backstage and was kind of disgruntled and mad about our performance and thought that we should have performed longer. And he was kind of threatening to, steal somebody's chain or whatever. The
Oh,
security
wow.
didn't get him from back there. Finally, ultimately, they kicked him out. But Prodigy grabbed some kind of little metal thing from somewhere. I don't know where he got it from. He crumpled it up and just for protection. And as we was walking outside, the guy was standing there, and Prodigy busted him across the face, and the guy was just leaking blood. And that's one thing I can say about P. He had a lot of heart. You know what I mean?
Oh my goodness. Wow. So when we talk about the greatest rappers of all time, everybody has an opinion, and there's really not a right or wrong answer. It's kind of opinion based. But can we put Prodigy in that category?
Absolutely. I mean, you can absolutely put Prodigy in that category. I mean, he was one of the illest lyricists around. You know what I mean? He was going so with the best of them. And anybody that's in the top 5 of the 90s and the early 2000s, you could ask those top 5 artists if Prodigy belongs in the top 5, and I'm sure 90% of them would say yes.
I know a lot of people that I've spoken with, I've interviewed. If I say who are some of your favorite rappers of all time, a lot of times Prodigy always is in that list, top 5, like you said.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what would make him one of the greatest of all time?
What would make him one of the greatest of all time is his consistency with dope verses. Period. His consistency with dope verses and his opening lines to verses was a hallmark of his, right? His opening lines would be the first thing that will pull you in, and then he'll be consistent throughout the verse, just captivating you with what he was saying.
Yeah. Mobb Deep, you guys both are such an articulate group. Like I could literally close my eyes and listen to an album, and I feel you're telling me the story or I'm watching a movie. Did you guys have a goal of that, or how did that work out?
Nah. I mean, it came with the territory. You know what I mean? It came with a vivid picture because everything around us was so vivid that how could we not, when we finally wrote, not be vivid in what we was writing?
Do you guys have a lot of unreleased music that you might be releasing at some point?
Yeah, I've been, talking to Prodigy's family, his estate, and they I think they feel that it's finally time to make a Mobb Deep album. So everything kind of really hinged on them. You know what I mean? But you have to. I had to give the family time. You know what I mean? It's not about Mobb Deep. It's about them. They lost somebody truly special. You know what I mean? Their father. You know what I mean? A husband and a dad and all of that. So it wasn't. I know the fans always love instant gratification. Like, when you gonna put a Mobb Deep album out? When you gonna put a Mobb Deep album out? But they forget that that Prodigy's family is still in mourning, and they will be for a long time. So, we have to give them their space, and whenever they say it's time for a Mobb Deep album out, a Mobb Deep album out will come.
Excellent. So do you guys have music that was unreleased going back to the early or mid 90s that you could possibly put on a new album?
Yeah, we got tons of unreleased music. You know what I mean? Music that people, if they heard it, they probably think it sounds outdated, but to the true fans, they'd be like, "This is what I want to hear." You know what I mean? Authentic.
Of course. Absolutely. Do you have a dream collaboration you haven't been able to link up with yet?
I would love to do a collaboration with Dr. Dre.
Well, Havoc, it's very, very cool talking to you today. Do you have anything else you'd like to promote? How can fans keep up with you?
Just to follow me on IG, Mobb Deep Havoc. You know what I mean? And thanks for all the support. And new music is on the way soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time. Very appreciated.
Thank you, man.
Yes, sir.